Hi, and welcome to our week 2 instructor highlights video. I'm posting this one a little early because of Easter break during week 2, and I figured that you would want to get the information ahead of time since a couple of our assignments are due a little earlier and a few of them due a little later due to the break. So to start off with, first a review of what we discussed and learned about in week 1. Week 1 was basically focused on introductions and getting reacquainted with where we're at in the Unified Mission Seminar after we just got done with spring break. Week 1, the main learning focus was an introduction to ethics and what ethics is. In Kite's book, An Ethical Life, in Chapter 1, he outlines 13 common ethical myths that kind of to help give you an idea of what ethics is and what it isn't. And I'm going to post, as soon as I'm done with this, making this video, I'm going to post a PowerPoint quiz, and it's nothing that's graded, but it's something, a tool for you to take a look at to see if you took away the big points that Kite is trying to relay in Chapter 1, because there's a lot of information there in those 13 debunkings of myth, and so it kind of distills things down to the core of what the point he's trying to get across with each of those misconceptions. So take a look at that when you have some time. And then in the reading from Loeb, the Chapter 9, Widening the Circle, Loeb talked about how there is strength not only in numbers of people, but also in casting a wide net. Not necessarily, in the idea of casting that wide net in order to gather everyone into your group under, in support of your cause, but casting a wide net in the idea of making connections, building bridges with people who may not totally identify with your cause, but by finding commonalities and figuring out how you can help each other when, as far as between people on opposite sides of the aisle, for instance, how that is really important to making everyone strong in their cause and advocating for it. The importance of building bridges and alliances with people we don't always agree with was when I reread this chapter again, an example from my life that was like, wow, I was totally unexpected, that related to this topic was from the robotics tournament that I just went to. My son Sam is on his school's robotics team, and at the beginning of March I chaperoned his team in Duluth at the Lake Superior Robotics Competition, and it's a FIRST robotics competition if you're familiar with that organization. And the way the competition is set up is around the idea of cooperation, is what they call it. Obviously, a combination of not only competition but cooperation, and how that fuels success, how everyone does better. Not that everyone's going to do equally better. There's still that competition part, that there are some people who are going to do better than others, but by cooperating, that the playing field, so to speak, is raised. The bar is raised for everyone, and that everybody's learning and growth accelerates through cooperation. So how this was lived out in the first robotics competition is that, so you have, I think there is probably like 60 schools with robots at this competition, and they spend a couple days doing qualification matches, and they keep all sorts of statistics on the robots, not only the competition itself, but each of the teams also, they have what they call recruiters, who watch particular robots, and they have like a little score sheet, and they keep track of different things, different abilities and skills that the robot had. And the reason why they do that is because after the 2 days of qualification matches, the tournament selects I think it was 8. The top 8 scoring robots are selected as team captains. And then those top 8 teams get to select alliances with other robots from the entire playing field, from every single, all 60 robots. They can select any robot any 2 robots that they want among the 60 to form an alliance with, and those robots then get to join that team, and they go on to the semifinal competition. And how they select their alliances is by looking at what they try to pick robots that are really good at doing things that maybe their robot isn't good at, and so that they can have a diversified team with robots that can complete a variety of tasks that are score producing tasks, and not that all of the robots on the team can do all these tasks, because they don't give them a whole lot of time to work on these robots. I think they have 6 weeks to build a robot. So it's very rare that there's any one robot that can do all the tasks. So they create these alliances based on trying to build a team that can do as many tasks and score as many points as possible. And I just thought this was a great demonstration of this idea of building alliances with people that you don't necessarily get along with. Now, in this case, in the first 2 days of the tournament, there aren't any alliances built yet. Each robot team is trying to do the best they can and score the most points that they can. And to demonstrate what their robot is capable of doing. But then, as we get to the important part of the tournament, that's when these robots that maybe this robot that was maybe your fiercest competitor at one point, you identify as being your closest ally, and then as things get down to the finals, those alliances are solidified, and it's not just one winner who goes on to the national competition. Then it's that team of 3. So there can be a robot that is in the after the qualifying rounds maybe was on the lower half of the 60, but ends up going to the national competition because they were good at building alliances. So and everybody on that team was able to benefit and go to nationals. So it's just a everyday example of what Loeb is talking about in chapter 9 about creating alliances, building bridges, and how everyone is strengthened in their advocacy work by doing that. Excuse me. So now on to week 2, which is where we're headed. The learning focus for this coming week is on the 4-way method of ethical decision making and vision. So your reading assignment for this coming week is to read in An Ethical Life, Chapter 2, which is entitled 4 Ways of Ethical Thinking. This is, do not skim read this. Read this thoroughly. There are so many great takeaways from this chapter that I can guarantee you will use in your everyday life and in your work, especially if you are in a decision-making role, leadership role where you're working. We will learn about the 4 different ways that people think and reason about ethics. They are truth, consequences, fairness, and character. And Kite has actually put together a method of ethical decision making involving these 4 ways of thinking. And you'll find in the book a great chart that I have actually copied and laminated. And when I last time I was in a supervisory role, I had it near my desk so that I could look at it whenever I was in a position that I needed to make a decision. It is really helpful. So enjoy reading that chapter 2. You're also to read in Loeb, Chapter 10, Pieces of a Vision. And I found when I read this, and in fact, every time I read this chapter, that it is really a bunch of pieces. That's the best way to put it. On first reading, it seems like he took a whole bunch of different thoughts that he didn't know what to do with, and in relation to putting it in the book, and just put them all in this chapter. But after rereading it several times and just kind of like sitting with it, there is a bigger picture in this chapter, and it's that the big picture can be overwhelming, and that a good strategy to deal with that overwhelm is to break the vision down into smaller pieces to tackle. And a real good strategy in doing that is to address things as they come. That concept of living in the now, if you've ever heard of that. There's a book out there by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now. If you haven't read it, and have extra time after you graduate, it's a good read. And besides addressing issues as they are presented to you, it's also important for us to accept that we're never going to solve every problem, every issue that's out there. And despite that fact, that doesn't mean that you should go into isolation and because you're overwhelmed and you've given up because you'll never solve all the world's problems. But just trusting that as long as we're each participating and being connected with each other by addressing what issues we can and speaking out for things as we encounter them, that is the best that we can do. And if everybody does the best that we can do, we can make some significant changes in the world. Will we create a utopia? Probably not in our lifetimes. It is, if you have a Christian worldview, it is the goal of our life, and the goal of our faith is to build and enter into the kingdom of God, which is that just community, that just society, and so look at the big picture. yes, if there are definitely people in the world who do think that we can have a global community free of injustice at some point. But that big picture can be overwhelming, and so we need to break it down and bring it into smaller things that we can actually affect change with. All right, so as far as graded assignments, we have, because of Easter break, we've got both of our discussion boards are due earlier in the week than they normally are. So the first discussion board is on issues around finding a replacement for Justice Antonin Scalia. We'll be using, this is the current event discussion, so we'll be using that rubric. As far as the writing, your posts for the discussion, things to focus your writing on. What are your continuing impressions of this whole topic of the Supreme Court nominee, and how people are responding to the fact that we have a vacancy on the Supreme Court? Have you changed your mind at all since this topic first hit the media? It kind of hit the media with a bang and then quieted down a bit, and now there seems to be some more movement now that I'm seeing in the media. So has your opinion, or have you changed your mind at all since this news first broke? You're asked to apply Franciscan values, concepts from our diversity unit, and the common good to this topic. Because it's Easter break, I'm not going to be looking for you to apply all of those things to this topic. You're more than welcome to just choose one, whether it's values, diversity, or the common good, and apply it to the topic. I do want everyone, though, besides picking one of those three, to talk about what ethical concept that you have read about in Kite, in Ethical Life. What ethical concept can you apply to this topic? And then tell us, how does this topic affect you? So how does whoever the Supreme Court Justice nominee is, how does that affect you? Or how the process is currently going, how does that affect you? So once again, you're using the current event discussion rubric to clarify the vagueness in that rubric. When I'm grading, I'm looking that you demonstrate that you understand the current debate around this issue. I'm looking for you to offer your supported opinion. So when giving your opinion, don't forget to explain why you think the way you do. And then because and then also that in offering your opinion, that you answer the guideline questions that I just kind of outlined for you. And those guidelines are at the top of each discussion board. In supporting your opinion, you need to cite at least one outside source. And then also cite any other sources that you used in informing yourself about this current event topic. And then also, I'm looking for you to offer a personal experience that supports why you have the opinion you do. And as always, I'll take points off if your postings are not on time, or you didn't meet the word limits, or not limits, the word count needed. So that is the current event discussion for the week. Oh, and it's due early. The initial post is due Monday, March 21st. The response to another student is due Wednesday, March 23rd. So this is a bit earlier than normal. And this discussion board is worth double points. Most current event discussion boards have been worth 10 points. This one is worth 20. All right. The other discussion for this week is a video discussion on the community of Bell Harbor and how they addressed a number of crises within their community. So if you go on Moodle, there is a video posted. It's from the 60 Minutes television series. So watch that video. If for some reason the video link isn't working for you, let me know right away and I'll fix it. I haven't had any problems in the past with students being able to access it, but in case you do, let me know. So for this discussion, you're asked to summarize the video. You're asked to tell us what your personal reaction was to the video. For this, so those are the guidelines. And then the rubric that I use for grading this discussion is the online video discussion rubric. And these rubrics can be found in the Adult Learner's Guide towards the back. So in that rubric, what I'm looking for is that you demonstrate that you watch the video, that you are able to articulate a thoughtful reaction to the video, that you cite at least one outside resource that expanded your understanding of the video, and that you also offer a personal experience that came up for you in reaction to the video. And once again, I expect that postings are on time and that you meet the word count minimums, and if you don't, then some points are taken off. And these posts are also due early this week, and they're the same as the other discussion board. So initial posts due Monday, March 21st, and the response to another student on Wednesday, March 23rd. This week we continue writing of the deliberation paper number 4, so you should complete your writing. Just to reiterate from last week, what you're being asked to write about in this deliberation paper, you're asked to express your worldview, which worldview means how you look at the world. A lot of people relate it to their personal philosophy. In expressing your worldview, you're asked to use examples from some of our text from this semester, Glee, which is the St. Francis book, Loeb, Soul of a Citizen, and Kite, which is an ethical life. You're used to examples from those to express your worldview. You're also asked to use examples from your own personal experience. Since this is your worldview, you need to use your experience to help you define it. And then as you're defining your worldview, because this could be huge. You could write for pages and pages and pages on your worldview. So to help you focus it down, the 3 areas that we're specifically hoping that you'll talk about is your spirituality, what you are tolerant or intolerant of, and how do you contemplate. So those are the 3 areas to focus in on, so that you're not writing forever. While this is primarily a reflection paper, you must do research for it, and you must cite outside sources in defining your worldview. And for those sources, just to reiterate again, extensive outside resources is 3 or more of them. Limited, I define as 1 to 2 outside resources, and then none is none. And if you don't even utilize course texts in the paper, you don't get any points under that grading criteria. Other things to clarify in the rubric, in the body of your paper, I'm looking that you address all of the components in the writing guidelines, and then your paper should have an introduction that outlines the paper and a conclusion which clearly summarizes it. And the deliberation paper is due a little bit later than those normally are. It's due on Tuesday, March 29th, which is the day back from Easter break. So you get a couple extra days for that paper. And that rubric, if you want to look at the rubrics, and I always encourage people, like what I like to do is I write a paper, I follow the guidelines, I write the paper, and then I look at the grading rubric and ask myself, okay, have I addressed all these grading criteria, and make whatever changes are necessary to tweak my paper a little bit so I make sure that I get full points. On Tuesday, March 29th, I'm also giving you some extra time to write the Q&A essay question for Loeb Chapter 10. And that rubric is the same Q&A rubric that we've been using all semester. Both of these rubrics, both the deliberation rubric and the Q&A rubric, can be found on Moodle. When you click on where the assignment submission, the first thing that comes up is a window that displays the grading rubric, so you can take a look at those there. And then the last thing I wanted to do is just give you a heads up that beginning in April, I will be only offering virtual office hours. Right now, I'm sitting in an adjunct instructor office here at Viterbo University, and I have been doing that on Fridays all semester. But no one's come and visit me, and it's not required that I have on-site office hours when I'm just teaching a online class. So for the second session, I decided that I'm just going to have virtual office hours, because that's actually when people get in touch with me. So my new virtual office hours will be Monday through Wednesday, same as always, 1 to 2 p.m. And then on Thursdays, I will be available between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And it will, it'll be very much the similar. I will be immediately available. Sometimes it may be like you text me and within seconds I text you back. Sometimes it might be, an hour or two, but certainly more than the 24 to 48 hours that they normally require of instructors. And then on Fridays, 1 to 2 will be the virtual office hours. So if you have any questions about what these office hours are, I'll have that updated on our Moodle site as well. So that's it. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your Easter break, and and if you choose to utilize Easter break to catch up on reading or assignments or whatever, feel free to contact me. I am happy to answer questions as I'm able to during Easter break as well. So thanks, and enjoy.